Hi, welcome back. We're going to finish our hardback multi-signature book. So, your signatures have been sewn together. You have applied PVA glue to the outside. You let it sit for a good amount of time, an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, probably overnight is really where it's at. What you will find is that when you open this up, it doesn't slip around anymore. It's not moving anymore. Your pages are a lot more stable than they were before. So that's good. All right, what do we have here? We have our covers. We have a little skinny stick, which is going to be our spine. The spine is going to be the same height as the Davy board, right? And it should be the thickness of this, right? The thickness of this plus 2 Davy boards, because this is the way it's put together. It's put together so that this overlaps and protects the book block. Now, you will see some books that don't have a hard spine here. Instead, it's just sort of stiff and it comes around, or the spine is a little bit more narrow than this. All right, so these are just different styles of making a book, but traditionally this is what you want. You want this to go over the book block, right, and also protect the cover itself so that when you pull it out from a bookshelf, boop, you don't pull it out and get it all stressed out and break, have it break over time. Okay, so here we are. You also have your end papers, which are going to be this stiff sort of paper. We have book cloth, we have a long piece and an interior piece. And we also have our decorative paper that we're gonna use for our covers. So let us begin. The first thing that we're going to do is we are going to establish this with the book cloth. All right, so we're gonna lay down our book cloth, face down, nice part down, and we are simply going to position our Davy board so that each cover is about even here. So in other words, this distance is even on both sides. It's on the same height. And we're gonna place this inside. Now, you may be tempted to put these things together. Don't do that. If you do, you won't be able to turn this. You'll find, you'll try to turn this and it won't work, okay? We need 3.5 times, approximately, the thickness of this board as our French groove. The French groove is the gap between your book board and the next book board so that things can turn easily. So if we took 3 thicknesses of Davy board, right, and we measured that, we would end up with 1/4 inch. So this is the approximate thing that we want. So it's 3.5 times, so it's gonna be a little bit more than 1/4 inch. So when we lay this down, the gap that we're looking for both sides of the spine is about 1/4 inch. So let me measure that to show you what it looks like. So that's a little bit more than 1/4 inch there. It's a little bit more than 1/4 inch there. All right. If I'm going to count these little tiny marks, right, is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 eighths of an inch. All right. All right. Or actually, that's 5/16, excuse me. All right. Okay. So, where's my pencil? Here it is. All right, the very first thing I'm going to do is just to draw the spine in. So, about 1 inch here, about 1 inch here, right in the middle. With my pencil. Great job, right? All right. Now I'm going to take this, and if you're feeling a little anxious about the eyeballing that I recommended, you can certainly take this a little bit more than 1/4 inch. And since we can see through this ruler, that's going to be the edge. That's a pretty good thickness there, right? Kind of a lot. One thing I want you to keep in mind is that when you draw something, unless you have a nice automatic pencil that's lead, goes straight out, this is going to be a thickness, all right? The lead of your pencil actually creates a thickness. So keep that in mind. So actually, as I'm drawing this, I'm doing it at 1/4 inch, knowing that this is going to create more space. All right, so that's that. I want this to be straight. So again, I'm going to use my ruler. And I'm going to make a straight line. This is so that when I put this all together, you know, the pressure's on with the glue. I don't have to think. Oops, I moved a little bit. All right. I could simply just put all this stuff in its correct spots and, you know, everything, fitting everything into place. Okay. All right, that seems about right. Okay, so this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna put PVA glue, because remember we're using PVA whenever we, ooh, my PVA kind of, look at that, that's gross. Whenever we're using fabric. Because the PVA is stronger than the glue stick. My PVA is getting yucky. Okay, from the inside, radiating out. Thin, thin, thin. We don't want anything squishing out. So we're gonna do this little tricky maneuver of lifting that, getting rid of our gluey spot. And we're gonna line all this up. Now, line it all up to the top of your line. Meaning, don't try to fix it in between. If you've measured correctly, it should all work out fine. Just line everything up. And you wanna make sure that your cover is straight. All right, so this is what I'm looking at. I'm gonna fold these over. No need for me to cut any corners because I don't have to worry about an edge here, a corner. Okay, we're always gonna do the fabric before we do the decorative paper. So this looks like this. This is still not strong enough. My measuring is slightly off. Move that over a little bit. Okay, this is supposed to fit into here, giving us a small gap between the top and bottom. So in other words, if we put this here, you can see it, right? So there's a little less space there. So if this is 5.5, this is 5 1/4. So I'm subtracting 1/4 to get the right general kind of measurement there, all right? This is gonna live right on top of here, covering this, but making it stronger. That's its real job. Get rid of that glue. Yuck, more glue on here. Okay. Now, this isn't fun. Nobody's pretending it's fun when your fabric curls. Just do your best. And remember, the edges of this, they're gonna get covered up. So I'm gonna place this as evenly as I can. Okay, have a tiny window of time as I lay it down. I got some glue there, but I think I'm gonna be okay because this is gonna cover some of that. All right, so as it stands now, I have that French groove there, but I really need to define it while this is pliable, kind of smooshing it down from both sides. Like doing stuff here, kind of tapping it together. Basically, this is what we want it to do. All right? See, we want it to do that. Okay? So, by telling it that's what you want and sort of demonstrating it, it will conform to that shape. Okay, now we're gonna do our decorative paper. This has been cut so that I have 1 inch all the way around and so that it covers this a little bit. How much you want, how much of a gap here that you want is totally up to you. It could be this, right? If you think that looks nice, but the paper always goes over the fabric. Oh, I've decided I want mine to be about 1/2 inch. So again, I'm gonna trace this. Scrap of board here. I'm gonna make my diagonal for my corner. This is slightly off. I'm gonna move this up. I got distracted. Okay, remeasure that. I'm gonna have to remember not to cut that interior one. Oops, gee whiz. Okay, that's that one. I'm gonna go ahead and cut it so I don't forget. I'm cutting slightly to the right. It's hard to see with my very confusing lines, but you know how to do this. You've done it 1,000,000 times. So that's that side. Let's do the other side. I'm eyeballing this. You could always measure. Measuring is a good thing to do. I've just been making things for such a long time that I trust my eye. There are always some interesting noises going on outside my studio window. I'm on a courtyard, and sometimes they have music there, or people eating lunch, restaurants, or concerts. It's kind of nice if it's not an annoyance. So nothing's really going on except for some weird beeping noises and stuff like that. Okay, so now I have this ready to go. Look at this. The grain is not aligned with this. Boo. Remember, I always want the grain to be aligned, going in the same direction, because as it expands and contracts with humidity, it'll pop up if it's in conflict. So, shame on me. Luckily, this is a dummy book, and I'm allowed to be a dummy with it. I could claim that I did that on purpose just to be able to point this out, but we both know that would be a lie. Okay, glue is on here, getting rid of this, placing this, and you know what, it's curling this way, so maybe the grain is going in the right direction. Okay, so this part that got covered up, that's the inside of the book. The pretty part that doesn't show any other little pieces of fabric, that's the outside of the book. Okay, I just carefully place this. Use my paper to fold this over. If something like that's going on, like I didn't have enough glue there, carefully correct it. During October, they kept having this Oktoberfest thing going on. There were yodelers and stuff like that, which was pretty good. Well, it was pretty good until it wasn't good, to be honest. It got tiresome after being in the studio for several hours and there was still yodeling going on. It was a bit much. But it's been really popular out there lately because it's outside and people can get together out there and be safe. Okay, that's that one. Now I'm gonna do this one. My father used to be able to yodel, but not me. Smush. Okay, so that's what the interior looks like. This is what the exterior looks like. It's gonna come together like that. It's gonna be nice. Nice. Okay, here is my book block. Now, I'm going to make my end papers and I'm going to make them in a very sort of tricky way. I'm going to fold these in half. And I want to point something out. I want to point out that this must get smushed down in here. Also must get smushed down. So basically, that means we're gonna come all the way to the edge with this, slightly back from there, right? So that this flush and this hangs over a wee bit. So I don't know if you can see that. It's flush here, hangs over a wee bit. So when I cut this, I made it not the same size as the paper. And this is folded over. This was 8.5 inches, then folded over, it's 4 1/4. This in total was 8 3/4, right? So when I fold this in half, it's not 4 1/2, it's a little bit, or 4 1/4, it's a little bit bigger, all right? This is important, because if you don't, if this is tight, if it doesn't have any of this movement, it'll rip. It'll definitely rip. I've had lots of books rip. So we're folding this paper in half that I gave you, but if you're doing this on your own, about 1/4 inch more. So in other words, this is 4 1/2, or no, it's 4 1/4. Let's check it. 4 1/4. Yeah, 4 1/4. And this is not quite a half, all right? 4 5/8, somewhere around there, all right? So we are gonna glue down the edge. This is gonna seem absurd, but if you look at books, this is how they're put together. We're gonna glue down a little strip here, all right? That's probably even too generous. You can see it. It's like 1/4 inch, something like that. I'm going to put this down. This is the edge I want to maintain, and this hangs over a little bit, all right? Stick that down. And I'm gonna do the same thing with the other side. Okay, I'm gonna open that up, and I'm being very gentle with this now. I'm just sort of using this paper so that I don't end up making scratchy marks on my nice paper. Open this one up to make sure that this is really stuck down. In a better world, we would let this sit so that the glue can sit and dry. But we don't want to watch glue dry, right? So this is what it looks like. There's a little bit of an overhang here. I'll show it to you this way so you can see, all right? This side is flush. Now, I'm going to glue this in. I'm going to put this right in the middle, okay? And now I'm going to do something even trickier. I'm going to put glue on the back side of this, and I'm going to put this side down first, all right? I'm going to slip a piece of paper under here so I don't get glue where I don't want it. The reason I shy away from using PVA on paper is because paper loves to buckle when it gets wet. And it's so hard to make things do what they should when they're buckling and curling. So I do like to use glue stick because it's dry. Okay, I've only done one side, and this is important. Before I stick it down, I'm placing this as much in the middle as I possibly can imagine, top and bottom. I'm gonna hold this, and then I'm going to let this flop down. Now, if I need to readjust this, which I do a little tiny bit, I can. I'm gonna fold this over, okay? That part's stuck down. I'm gonna slip some paper in between, and I'm gonna glue this one down. I'm not just folding the book over. I'm gonna do the same kind of move as I did before. So I'm pulling up this book block, right? Let me pull it up completely. All right, and I'm gonna lay this down as I feel like it's in the middle, all right? Flatten that down. It's funny, as I look at this now, I wish I had, not had glue on my fingers when I did it, but I think the paper could have been even wider. Okay, so now I'm gonna close the whole book. Now, what will happen, and I might have been too generous with that, let me see. So there should be this kind of gap here, all right, to give your block the ability to kind of move around a little bit, right? So that this does not rip, because that's not what we want. This is still wet, so it's hard to see how it sets up, but you can see from this one, right, that there's this kind of funkiness here. It's perfectly normal. It's the funkiness that you want, and it'll close nicely. Now, while this is kind of damp, everything about this is damp right now, okay? So this is still damp. Pages are still, well, the pages aren't, but you know, the end papers are damp. So what I'd like you to do is I want you to sort of shape it into what you know this book should be, right? You can use your bone folder to kind of coax this French groove into a nice shape. Knock down the top and bottom. And then I'm going to suggest strongly that you let this sit under some weight. So put it down, put some weight on there, and then in a few hours, better the next day, do it the next day, come back to this, and you will find that it behaves beautifully and that you have made a lovely, lovely hardback multi-signature book. Good job. See you soon.